All right, a quick update for Linux distributions. There's been some movement in the area of Red Hat Enterprise Linux distributions. If you haven't heard, last year there was a bit of a shock when Red Hat Enterprise Linux, the parent company, well, it's IBM, but Red Hat announced that they were no longer going to be supporting the CentOS project. And instead, they were rolling it over into what was known as CentOS Streams, which is basically an upstream distribution from Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So basically, the distribution flow goes Fedora, CentOS Streams, and then Red Hat, which made CentOS Streams more unstable than Red Hat. Previously, CentOS was just as reliable as Red Hat. A lot of people didn't like that, and so the founders of the CentOS project went off and formed a new operating system called Rocky Linux. It took them a while to get it started, but the first release has now occurred. During that time, there was another distribution which formed called Alma Linux. So now if you want a Red Hat-based distribution, you can either choose Red Hat Enterprise Linux itself, which is free. If you're using it for personal use, you just need to sign up for a development account with Red Hat on their website, and then you could download it, and then you could link your subscription to your development profile, and then you get access to all the Red Hat repositories. CentOS is still available, but it's not recommended to install CentOS anymore. It's basically a dead operating system. However, the other two options, which are now currently available, Alma Linux and Rocky Linux. Either one of these are, from what I understand, identical to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, just a few weeks after the fact when Red Hat releases updates. These two distributions get those updates at a later time, and really that's what the projects are working towards, is the process of ensuring that anytime Red Hat does an update, they're able to include that in their distribution. And that really determines the viability of these two distributions, whether or not there's going to be people in order to sustain them. It does appear as though Rocky Linux is in for the long haul. Alma Linux was sooner to the game. They got a distribution based on Red Hat out first. And there is some question about the longevity, but it appears to be a pretty solid distribution. Still over on the Debian side, or Debian side, depending on how you pronounce it, there's Debian itself, which is available free for install. Ubuntu, widely popular. And for people who are very new to Linux, something called Linux Mint. Very user-friendly, PC-centric Linux operating system. So here's your basic run-of-the-mill choices if you're looking for running Linux. If you're running Linux in an enterprise environment, likely you're either running Red Hat or Debian in a what's known as a headless server or a virtual machine. And actually the term headless means that there's no video and everything is being outputted via console. But the term still applies that if it's either a virtual machine or a bare metal server that doesn't have any video connected to the actual motherboard of the server, and you're just using SSH to connect to it, and it's command line only, the term headless is used to refer to those types of things. So if you're using a headless server in an enterprise, likely you're running either Debian or Red Hat. I haven't really seen anyone run Ubuntu as an enterprise server. I understand it can be, and there's, I'm sure, tons of people out there who do use Ubuntu as a server in an enterprise. I just haven't seen it. Everything I've seen, that if you're an enterprise running a Linux server, is either Debian or Red Hat. Linux Mint, again, is geared for PC use, so you don't see this in enterprises or businesses. You see this for people using Linux in their homes. CentOS, wouldn't recommend installing it again because the support for it has ended. Alma Linux and Rocky Linux, though, very solid from what I understand. Complete replicas of the open source of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, the leader in servers for enterprise Linux. Red Hat has also done some pretty good work on making a end user version of their operating system. In fact, that's what I use on my laptop at home as I run Red Hat. I've got a developer account, and it has Google Chrome. It has LibreOffice, which is very similar to Microsoft Office, or the G Suite of applications, just running on my PC. I don't really use it that much because my applications are basically just the G Suite collection of apps, and I also use Microsoft's apps via O365, courtesy of my employer. For my personal use, everything is the Google suite of applications. So that's what's happened recently in Linux distributions. It really depends on what you're going to be using it for, is which distribution you're going to be using. And there are obviously tons of other distributions. This is just a very skinny down version of what's available. But the hot news are these two, the Alma Linux and the Rocky Linux. New kids on the block, and it actually expands the Red Hat ecosystem a little bit, because now instead of there just being CentOS, now there's basically two contenders for the free version of Red Hat out there. And these are, from what I understand, enterprise class. You can run them in server mode, or you can run them in desktop mode with a Windows GUI environment. So whichever way you want to run them is going to be easy to install. And there you have it.